Brandel Chamblee does a complete 180 on LIV Golf. You know, you can't make this stuff up. He comes out and says that the PGA Tour, now that John Rahm has departed, should make this deal and dissolve LIV and move along. Darkstar, I find that laughable, comical, and stupid all at the same time. What was your first reaction? Then I'll explain why I think it was laughable, comical, and stupid.
Yeah, well, it's his dream. Whatever you call it. That's what he would do anything to dissolve LIV. And his dream is, well, just like Rory said, give us all the money. Forget about the $1.5 billion you've invested already in the LIV Golf. Dissolve the league. Make Phil Mickelson come hat in hand, crawl back. Brooks Koepka, Dustin Johnson, crawl back to the PGA Tour, begging on bended knee. That's his dream. Dissolve LIV. These guys have to crawl back into my world where I am the ultimate authority on right and wrong.
It is. It's a fantasy is what it is. And I will point out what's obvious to me, and I think many of our viewers, Brandel is talking his own book, right? His fantasy is really being fed by, I wonder if it's unconscious or not. Maybe. It might even be unconsciously happening to Brandel, which would explain his stupidity. He is a spokesperson. He makes his living analyzing and talking about the PGA Tour. If the PGA Tour is not the tour, his job goes away or is diminished. So he's clearly hoping, fantasizing that doesn't happen. Because if LIV keeps going, then those guys over there, Faraday and those guys, are going to be the ones making the money, and not me, Brandel Chamblee, Brandel de Chamblee. That's as much of this as anything else, because who else would fantasize about something so stupid? Let's get this straight, Brandel. You want the PIF to give the PGA Tour $2 billion, and you're saying now that the PGA Tour's best interest is being served by accepting that deal. So the PGA Tour then needs to do the deal in your view. And at the same time, the PGA Tour is in a superior position to negotiate with the PIF. So much so that the PIF would say, you want to dissolve LIV? Sure, go right ahead. Because we desperately, desperately need a seat at the PGA Tour policy board. And we're willing to give you $2 billion and get rid of our $1.5 billion that we already dumped into LIV. We're willing to do all that just to be a part of your tour. That's how desperate we are here at the PIF. Is that what he's saying, Darkstar?
He is saying that exactly. That the Al Ramayan wants to have a seat so badly. He needs a seat so badly that, he's going to basically flush $3.5 billion down the toilet. And this is how diluted this whole statement is. Brandel, they have the money. They have the power. They are destroying the present ecosystem. And you know what? Half the players, give or take, want this ecosystem of the PGA Tour to be destroyed because, as Phil said, and Phil has been completely opposite of Brandel on pretty much every issue, the PGA Tour found all this money under the seat cushions to give out PIP money, to create these signature events. Even last year, they fed their own aristocracy a ridiculous amount of money. And like I said, the other guy, everybody's been right except for Brandel, and he holds to these ideals that are not logical. And as we've talked about in our show, our goal is to be logical. It's not logical that they're going to pay $2 billion for a seat when they already control the purse strings. They just go to the board and say, well, you're not meeting metrics. Mm-hmm. We're not giving you the next tranche of money. Yep. Oh, yeah, have private equity fill in that money and see how they react when you miss your numbers next time.
Yeah, and the same group of statements that Brandel Chamblee is saying that the PGA Tour should do the deal and then kill LIV. he is saying that because they need to do the deal, because if they don't, then LIV is going to keep taking their players and onward, right? Yeah. So I don't I don't know what's wrong with him. I feel sorry for him. His brain has stopped functioning for the past 2 years. You can't have it both ways. So the LIV has all the leverage. PIF and LIV have all the leverage. They can just keep taking players. They just demonstrated that with Jon Rahm. And the PGA Tour needs to do the deal. That needs to happen. And then as soon as that happens, the leverage shifts, apparently, and LIV will just negotiate away their right to have any real control over any of their money. It doesn't, I'm getting tired of almost saying the guy's a moron, but Brandel, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Right. Let me just say this. In his defense, he has been sitting down in that studio, and all he has been fed the last 10 years is how the PGA Tour is great. This is how we're running things. He has been dealing with the Jay Monahans, etc. The guys that are feeding him the information have been so one-sided, and he has not come out of that bubble that he lives in to realize when was the last time he talked to a rank and file player? And that's what's shocking to me is obviously he was a rank and file player. Mm-hmm. He must have been somewhat disgruntled where he said, well, maybe I can try this announcing thing because I'm not making it as a player. So does he not remember when he was a disgruntled rank and file player, not making any money, not going to be able to create any kind of standard of living for himself? And then here's the problem. So all he talks to is the higher-ups of the PGA Tour, the star players, and he has no concept of what's really going on, what's really been happening with the PGA Tour, and why the Greg Normans, Phil Mickelsons were able to create literally overnight a viable competitive tour that has significant financial backing, a lot greater financial backing than the PGA Tour. He's lived in the bubble. I'll give him, I'm going to make an excuse for him. He has not had any real awareness of what has happened to the PGA Tour since Tiger came to the tour.
Tiger came along at the right time, but now he's gone now from a playing point of view. But I can tell Brandel what's going on here with the deal, and so can Darkstar, and we'll summarize it right here, right now. The deal's going to happen because it has to. So Brandel, you get your wish. Why does it have to? Because the PGA Tour can't function without it. First of all, they want the money. $2 billion is a lot of money. And they can't afford to lose more players, true, and future players, also true. And PIF is willing to put continued pressure not only on the PGA Tour, but eventually they'll get to the majors and start pressuring them too to get their point, to get the OWGR points, or at least to get the pathway, forget the OWGR, to get a pathway for LIV players to get on in those majors. And John helps that, for sure. John helps that from a qualification point of view, whatever that system looks like. And that's good for everybody. And Brandel, the only way LIV goes away, there's only one way. We've said it many times. If the PIF wants it to, the only party that will decide LIV's fate will be the PIF. Okay, it can say whatever it wants in that framework agreement, and it can say whatever they're going to say in the new agreement. And in there will be veto power for the PIF, of course, over the money they've already invested, of course, and what's going to happen with that. Moreover, from a business point of view, forget the money point of view, investor's point of view, LIV works, LIV helps, LIV energizes, LIV is innovative, LIV is different, LIV possibly can bring in younger audiences where the PGA Tour has proven unequivocally it can't. Their audience is shrinking. It's getting older. LIV's audience is, who knows? It's potential, global potential. And having global exposure is phenomenally important because there's a lot more young people living elsewhere, not in Western Europe, not in America. So you need to go in other places. You need to go to Asia. You have to. Middle East. You have to if you're going to have access to audience. So, the PIF is seeing this clearly. Brandel is not, and the PGA Tour is being forced to do the right thing, which is good for all of us golf fans, that the right thing will happen here. So it might be looking ugly right now, certainly messier than it should have been. John did not need to get to LIV in order for this to go forward, but that's what had to happen. Apparently, the PIF thought so, and John probably thought so, or he wouldn't have done it. So he thinks his interests are being better served there, obviously. So and here we are. So cooler heads will prevail. Darkstar, the deal gets done. Brandel will get what he wishes, except he will not get LIV to disappear. You'd agree?
Yeah, I would agree. I would say a couple things quickly about Rahm. I don't think he was defending LIV, the entity, as much as the European players, and obviously Phil Mickelson. I thought it was interesting in his interview. Rahm had mentioned no players actively solicited me to join LIV. I asked questions at times of those players, but nobody actively went out and engaged in a conversation to try to sway me to go to the LIV Golf League. I found that very interesting. So I think he was more thinking about the players. I think he is a Phil Mickelson disciple, and he actually thinks about all of the players and all those players in Europe and all those players on LIV. He was sticking up for them. I will say that LIV has made real inroads in Asian markets, Australia, etc. And really, that's where the growth is going to come. We are a world economy now. Golf needs to be a world sport, and that's where the growth is going to come. Golf is becoming prohibitive from an expense standpoint in the United States. $300-400 to go play a public course on a vacation. It's getting out of hand. $600 for a driver. That's crazy. It's getting out of hand.
Agreed. And we all know this as players. And I like your point about, and the turn of a phrase that Jon Rahm perhaps is a Phil Mickelson disciple. I was thinking the same thing. You've picked up on my energy waves, but in a little different way. I think it's this show is not about John and more deeply into his motivations to go over to LIV beyond the vast fortune that he will earn there, being reason 4 probably, number 4 on his list of reasons to go. An important reason. It's in the top 5, but it's not one. And I'm willing to keep saying that over and over again. But why is it inconceivable, Darkstar? You be my foil. Why is it inconceivable that Jon Rahm doesn't feel a very similar way about the PGA Tour that Phil Mickelson was feeling about the PGA Tour 5 years ago? They're friends. Phil and John are friends. They might see the world very much the same way.
Yeah, Rahm was always defending the DP Tour, the Ryder Cup. He was never saying anything. There was never anything really derogatory about LIV. They kept baiting him into saying things, and he wouldn't. And I think that's where, when you look 2 years ago, I said, well, he's a potential guy to go because of that. Now, even a Brooks Koepka, the day before he signed his contract and said, I'm playing for LIV, he's like, no way I could ever do that. I've been said, Koepka like, well, that was, I think Koepka literally had a response along the lines of, well, that was yesterday. Today,
that was so long ago, I can't remember.
Yeah, whereas Rahm never was a complete anti-LIV guy. And I think it created a little issue. I think there's an issue with him and Rory. I think Rory is not, as we've discussed, not the most intelligent person. So he is not. Rahm is no longer in Rory's camp. He's fed up. He's fed up with now something pushed Jon Rahm over the edge to be so anti-PGA Tour. He said, I'm done with this. I'm going to go have fun and deal with my family.
Tell me more about the question I asked you, which is it inconceivable that he sees the PGA Tour the same way Phil does? And so how did Phil see the tour 5 years ago, and does John now see it in the same or very similar way, and had a similar reaction? Phil left. Phil left the tour, took a huge risk to his reputation and career and legacy to do what he did, to go to this, pioneer nothing league LIV back when Phil did it. Yes, there was money there. Yeah, absolutely. But he didn't need the money, arguably. Or was he desperately out of money because of his gambling losses? I mean, that doesn't seem logical to me. I think Phil would have kept making money on the PGA Tour and been just fine. And if his legacy were more important to him, that's where he would have stayed. He could go play in the Masters, and he just won the PGA Championship as the oldest guy ever to do that. I mean, he was at the top of his game for a 50-year-old. Doesn't get any better. And whether he had 50 million or 10 million or 100 million in the bank, he had plenty of millions to be just fine. Plenty. And life would have continued and been good. But he didn't do that. He left to do what? To stick it in the ear in a nice way. Meaning I'm saying that in a nice way. I would say it differently on the podcast. But to stick it in the PGA Tour's ear and say, look, you guys are rat bastards and obnoxious greed, and I'm going over here to live to change the world, to change the golf world. Okay, fine. Leave a pin on that. So Jon Rahm starts out 2 years ago as a PGA Tour ophile, and then time goes along and things change, as you say, Darkstar. The tour does a secret deal with the PIF, the very people they were telling the players not to go. And then this happens, and then that happens, and what else happened? Now, we don't know what else happened, and we can speculate here, but probably not. We'll probably do a different show. Maybe on the podcast we'll do that. Something dramatically changed, and it was my theory here that John now sees the PGA Tour as a bad place to work, as did Phil Mickelson. And John now wants to join Phil in an effort to change the golf world. And if I go over there now, I can be a part of changing the world of golf and get rid of these obnoxious people that are running the PGA Tour, which is what Phil has told me all along. For years and years, they've been friends. And Phil's obviously been saying that for years and years to John over a cocktail all along. And it's true. I didn't take it so seriously. I mean, I know Phil believes that and his point of view. He's right, of course, over the digital media and all that stuff. Of course he's right. But gosh, now he's so right that I'm leaving. I'm going to go join him in this new crusade. Darkstar, you see it that way, or where can you fill in the gaps, or am I just being stupid?
Well, no, absolutely. I see it that way. And I think the final, as I've said, the final straw for a Jon Rahm was how the PGA Tour just completely demoted the DP Tour to a secondary tour, to a feeder tour to the PGA Tour. Remember, Jon Rahm is not just a European. He's a disciple of Sergio, Olazabal, and Seve. Those guys, the Spanish guys, really are the guys who put what was the European Tour, now they call it the DP Tour, really put the European Tour on the map and made that an equal tour with the PGA and said, hey, we're going to win majors. We're going to win Ryder Cups. That solidified Europe as an equal entity. And then the PGA Tour a little backhanded mission by the PGA Tour was to make the European guys secondary citizens again, as they were in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah. The Euros had a great run at Augusta, for example, right? With Seve, Langer, Olazabal, Woosnam. I mean, they were really doing well at the most viewed major in the world.
Right. The most viewed golf event in the world. They really dominated the last 20, 30 years.
They had a great run in the early 90s. Before Tiger, they had a great run.
Sure. And so I think that put them over the edge. That put Rahm over the edge. The fact that they were just demoting. And boy, Phil told me all these things that the PGA Tour does to the rank and file, and the PGA Tour keeps things under wraps. The players don't really know what's going on, obviously, from the announcement on June 6th. So Phil's been right. Rahm came to the realization Phil's been right, and then you have that final straw. I don't want my tour to be secondary. I'd be slapping the faces of Seve and Olazabal and my buddy Sergio to just stick it out with the PGA Tour. I don't want to stick it out any longer. Rory, you stick it out. I'm done.
Yeah. I mean, it's a different show. And I'll wrap up today, sort of circling back to Brandel's idiotic comments where the two opposing points can't possibly be true. You can't want the deal with Piff and then dissolve LIV because Piff's not going to go with that. And that the PGA Tour be in somehow a position of superiority to pull that off at the negotiating table. That's a fantasy. The Piff holds all the cards. The PGA Tour has no cards. So no cards at all. And that's not today, though. We've talked about it many times, but not today. So, yeah, my point on John is that the PGA Tour, I'll say it this way, the PGA Tour left him. He didn't leave it. He decided to go and take the money when the PGA Tour started to look like a bad place to work. And I can go work over there with my friends in a better place that's going to do more for the game the way I see the game. And I don't have to be underneath, really, Tiger, Rory, it's their tour, and the leadership that is obviously not looking out for the players, which has been evidenced up and down the line from the DP World Tour, as Darkstar mentions. I mean, there's plenty of evidence that the leadership of PGA Tour doesn't care about golfers, pro golfers. And Rahm said, I'm out of here, man. And I have this great deal. Then that's how it works, audience. Yes, I hate them. They're starting to screw this up. I don't trust them anymore. I don't like to work here anymore. And on the positive side, I would like to do something for Europe. I would like to do this with golf. I would like to do that thing. And then, boy, that's a lot of money. That's the order of battle. I don't like it here. I like these other things that I can do, and it's a lot of money. That's how decisions are made. Jon Rahm was never going to leave the PGA Tour if working over at LIV Golf was going to be a horrendous experience. He wasn't going to do it. He wouldn't do it. Why would I go work over there if I hate all those guys and I love all the guys here on the PGA Tour? He wouldn't. Not for any amount of money. He doesn't need the money. He's not desperate for money. He could live fine with his few $100 million that he's already got. And he said that. And so that's when he said that in the past, the money doesn't change me, wouldn't change me. He meant it. And then the PGA Tour started screwing with him in his mind. Whatever those key moments were, we'll probably learn that. I think John is enough of a transparent guy and doesn't care about what people think to tell us. I think he will tell us, and I would love to hear that. I'd love to hear his reasons, because that fascinates me, what his motivations are to have done what he did. Fascinating. And if Brandel understood more of that, he'd be a better analyst, and he would understand what he's saying now is stupid. I will leave it there, Darkstar, but I'll give you the last word.
Okay, so to simplify, what Brandel doesn't understand is you are a golfer, and the element of fun is Jon Rahm realized that is now taken away from me with the events in the last 6 to 8 months, the things that the PGA Tour has done. He doesn't, when he goes to the range to start a LIV event, it's the happiest place on the planet. There's going to be music playing. Everybody's going to be getting along, smiling. When he's on the range before a PGA Tour event, if he had to go to one, every middle-of-the-road player is going to want to talk with him, especially because, obviously, as we know in the hit and giggles, there's only 1 or 2 stars there. So when he shows up, he's going to get his ear bent by every middle-of-the-road player. And John doesn't have the personality to blow these guys off. See, that's what I think is a big issue. He doesn't have the personality to sit there and go, give lip service to a Latino, what's his name, Griffin, and those type of players. He actually would want to help them. So he would take his time, listen to them, probably go to somebody else. And he's like, I don't have this. I have 2 kids. I don't have the time, the energy, the inkling to deal with the problems the PGA Tour has created, and I will end up having the burden of dealing with the problems. Randall's not going to have that. Jay Monahan's not going to have that. I got to talk to the players all the time. And I'm done. 2 final straws. Screwing over the Europeans and having to deal with the players on the range. He's just like, wow, this is the greatest thing that could happen is I can escape this unscathed, happy.
Yeah, that certainly could be true in whole or part, and leaving a bad workplace for a better workplace, doing the same job for more money. that adds up to see you later. And maybe Brandel will start to put those points together, and maybe he should listen to us for a change and put it together. Well, for now, anyway, Darkstar, I'm going to go. So B Team is out.
Dr. Darkstar's out.
If you're a fan of the show, be sure to subscribe to our new audio podcast. That is where you will get topics that'll never get to YouTube. And there are a lot of those that we like to talk about that'll never make it to YouTube. So look in the description below for the link over to Substack. That's where you can subscribe to the podcast. And thank you again for being a fan.